Imagine this: a general is wounded by an incredibly talented archer, and instead of doing what most generals do with enemy combatants, this general takes this archer under his wing, he guides him, and allows him to become not only one of his most trusted advisors, but one of his most trusted generals going on in the future. Now, if I were to tell you that this is not just talking about the legendary events that happened with Taleb and Dalinar Kholin from the Stormlight Archives, but this is also an event from history, a legendary event from history that happened with Genghis Khan and his general Jebe, which, please excuse me if I'm pronouncing that terribly wrong. And with all of my other pronunciations today, please try and excuse me. I'm a white guy from Wyoming, so, take that into consideration. But the parallels don't stop there. Dalinar was from warlike warmonger culture. He was a warmonger known as the Blackthorn, and he went on to form a coalition of basically all of the Vorin kingdoms of Roshar. So he is just this incredible story, but that's also a story that is paralleled by Mongol history. And today we'll be exploring more of that, from the rise of the Blackthorn to the Bondsmith, from Genghis Khan to the Kun dynasty. Dalinar is best understood as a mashup between Genghis Khan and one of his most brilliant generals, Shubatai. And Shubatai is actually the person who Brandon Sanderson says that Dalinar is most closely based off of. He was a military genius. Now, like Genghis united the shattered Mongol tribes, Dalinar and Gavilar spent their early lives unifying the Alethi High Princes. They did this through duels, they did this through war, they did this through strategy, they did this through politics. They both come from this more warlike, uncivilized culture and form it forcibly at times into more unified bodies. And so that leads to one of Dalinar's darkest moments, and that is the Rift, the Rathalas massacre. So during their conquest, the Mongols razed any city who dared to defy them. They slaughtered entire populations of cities to create fear and havoc in their wake. It wasn't just revenge for killing their messengers that they sent, it was to set an example. It was to prevent further uprisings. They sacked entire cities and burnt them to the ground, like Samarkand and Nisapur, and they viewed it as a necessary evil that it took to build an empire. Dalinar, in his own time, was a similar instrument of war and force. He was the most brilliant and most skillful general that the Alethi had. And he also sacked cities, mostly Rathalas, but in one of the flashbacks, it also talks about how he had to prevent the men from taking riches from Taleb's village. And that kind of shows that Rathalas wasn't the only city that they sacked. It was just the only city that they burnt completely to the ground with the citizens still inside of it. So the forging of an empire and the unification and the forced unification, but also the shutdown of rebellion, was never an easy process, and it was often a bloody one. After the death of Genghis Khan, the Mongols were faced with a critical problem. How do you govern what you conquered? The solution was found in Genghis's grandson, Kublai Khan, which I'm sure that I'm mispronouncing that as well. But he went on to found the Yun dynasty in China. He realized that governing vastly different cultures of China required more than just their simple legal code that the Mongols had had for a long time. So he adopted Chinese traditions, he adopted Confucianism, and this greatly reflects how Dalinar is trying, many times in vain, to get the other high princes to adopt the Alethi war codes and to follow the teachings of Noadan. He desperately searches for ways to stabilize his nephew's fledgling rule over the Alethi high princes. Dalinar's ultimate parallel to Kublai Khan is his eventual unification and coalition of the Vorin nations of Roshar. The Yun dynasty was an unprecedented political unity across many nations, bringing a long period of internal peace, the Pax Mongolia, after decades and decades of war. Dalinar, the man known for burning the rift to the ground with its citizens inside of it, was now the man who has constructed a better world. He keeps taking the next step. He keeps moving forward, and he keeps continuing to try and better himself. He doesn't halt at the Blackthorn. He continues to move forward. He literally embodies the shift from ruthless military brilliance of Genghis Khan and Shubatai to the unification of Kublai Khan. In the end, Dalinar's power isn't his shard blade, his shard plate. It isn't even his power as a Knight Radiant. Well, it kind of is actually, because he is a bondsmith. And as a bondsmith, he forges things together into more perfect unions. And that is his true power, his ability to unite them. Gives me goosebumps just talking about it. That was Honor's plan all along. And it was the Stormfather's plan all along, as flawed as the Stormfather's plan was in the whole thing. But his story is a reminder that empires, whether fantastical or historical, are not just built on glory, but on a point where conquest turns to consolidation, where bloodshed turns to blood ties. And I think that is such a fun thing that Brandon Sanderson not only integrated into his story, but made a focal point of his story. It is such an amazing world building aspect that Brandon did so well in this. And that turning point is the hardest, it's the stickiest. And that's why not only did Dalinar have such a hard time with it, but Kublai Khan did not do it perfectly either. There were a lot of examples of him struggling with that throughout his whole reign and everything. But what do you guys think? Do you think that there are other historical figures that are closely related to characters in the Stormlight Archive or in any other medium? I am just getting into this, so let's get rolling. If you think that there is a good idea for another historical figure that you would like to see compared to a fantasy figure or a figure from your favorite book or TV show, then please put it down in the comments, and please don't forget to like and subscribe.